Hi there, welcome to this episode of the Event Manager Podcast by Skift Meetings, the podcast for curious event professionals embracing the future of business events. My name is Miguel Neves and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Skift Meetings. And in this episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Andrew Fleming-Brown, the Managing Director of SWG3. Our conversation revolves around community and sustainability, and in particular the work that Andrew and his partners and his team are doing at SWG3, an iconic independent venue in Glasgow, Scotland. We talk about how the whole venue and project was community built from the start, and how they balance a for-profit venue hire and culturally led projects. We talk about how the area was developed into a vibrant quarter with a clear environmental policy. We talk about SWG3's unique heating system called BODYHEAT, launched in 2021 at COP26, that captures heat from attendees and stores that heat and then uses it to heat the facilities at a later time. We talk about the ambitions for SWG3 becoming a circular campus, and we talk about the constant need to reimagine how to use the space and how to engage with the local community. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation, and don't forget to check out the other episodes of the podcast on our website or via your favorite podcast service. And now for a word from our sponsors, PHL Life Sciences, a division of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Host your convention or trade show in Philadelphia, one of America's leading life sciences hubs. PHL Life Sciences, the first and only CVB division of its kind, will connect you to the professionals at the forefront of your industry and to a culture you can only find in Philadelphia. A city known for its rich history that's forging a bright future, Philadelphia challenges the expected and defies convention. A world of discovery is waiting. Visit phlife.com to learn more. Hello, everybody. Delighted to have you join us today on the podcast. Today, with me, I have Andrew Fleming-Brown, the Managing Director of SWG3. Andrew, delighted to have you on the podcast.
Hi there. Yeah, it just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? SWG3. I remember when we came up with that, short abbreviating Studio Warehouse and G3 being the postcode we're in, we got a lot of backlash, but it's kind of it's mellowed now. So it's good to hear you having a few.
It's funny. I guess I'm used to sort of, postcodes and things, and you have that SW3 kind of jumps. It's like, oh yeah, there's an extra letter in there, so jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, people immediately think we're based in London, but when we're doing some kind of international conversations, but obviously, Glaswegian accents are fairly strong, although mine's quite mild actually. So hopefully that doesn't give you too many difficulties.
Easy to understand, which is great. I know. A lot of people call you Muttley, or that seems to be the kind of name that you go by in many circles or most circles. But why are we speaking to you today? I think we should answer that question first, and I'd love you to kind of introduce yourself and of course introduce SWG3 and do explain Muttley as well, because I think that's always fascinating. That comes up in every article I've been able to pull up on you.
Well, Muttley goes back 30 years. It's a schoolboy nickname. And of all the nicknames that were getting chucked around at that point, I think I came off pretty lightly in comparison to others. So, asthmatic and used to laugh like the dog in the wacky races. So, it was kind of gifted. I wouldn't say kindly, but it stuck with friends.
Well, you wear it with pride now, right? It's just become something part of you.
It works. It's easy. That's been with me a long time. SWG3 has been with me a long time. We've been kind of working our way down here 18, 19 years, really. We took over a pretty much derelict building back in 2003, 2004, started to kind of develop it into artist studios initially. I'd been out I studied at Gray's in Aberdeen and was lucky enough to do a little bit of studying in New York and found PS1 and did some invigilating out there. And that kind of idea of a multidiscipline art space was quite new to us in Scotland and in Glasgow. And I just took a lot of that learning, I think, into what has become this space. But it was a very different place back then. Our windows were polythene sheets that we'd staple gun to timber frames, and they were like that for many years. But yeah, so it's I guess it's been a labour of love, but it's become a fairly established cultural venue in Glasgow and wider, as we've managed to take on more space around here. Took over the warehouse next door, which was a galvanizers in 2016, and that kind of opened up our programming even further to more established artists and gave us some outdoor space. But we were always, these are old warehouses that we occupy. They weren't designed for people or the kind of program that we operate. They were designed for storing goods and kind of heavy industry. And, I was very conscious of that. And, in 2019, we were really starting to assess the environmental performance of our buildings. We're a building-based arts organization, so a lot of our content and activity happens on site. We do some other work elsewhere, but we're very much about this place. And we just wanted to try and improve that environmental performance. And that's how we got into conversation with Town Rock Energy and how we were very busy that year. So the idea that our audience could become a source of our energy very quickly became a trigger point of the conversation. Yeah.
Let's backtrack. There's a lot of information there. I want to make sure our readers, our listeners are really kind of following it.
I try to skim over the last 18 years quite quickly. There's a lot of stuff I want to forget, especially those first 10.
I can imagine. I mean, it sounds like a labor of love. But so SWG3 started off as a derelict site. You were inspired by your studies and the work that you were doing in arts and culture, etc. And you took what was a warehouse and kind of surrounding area, and you made an arts venue, right? And when was this? Which year was this?
So we took on the building, and I took a lease on the building in 2003. 2004.
Tell me about that conversation with when you took the lease. Was that are you serious? You're going to build a club here, really?
We weren't going to build a club. We had no plan, no business plan at all. I literally fell in love with the building. It was okay. So there was a ground floor businesses. So they were kind of a motorbike mechanic was down there. There was a powder coater, and there was a wedding car, a hire company. So there was these old Daimlers in the ground floor. So it was very kind of, it kind of added a lot to the character. On the floors above, there was some illegal parties, illegal raves running. And, at the time I attended and enjoyed. And then we ended up kind of putting on a couple of events ourselves up on the first floor. And, back then, you were the promoter, you were working the bar, and then the next day you come back and you clean up the mess. You do everything when you do these kind of events. So we came back the next day, and I took a wander up to the second floor, and it was just this kind of vast daylit kind of space of opportunity and excitement that I just did not want to let go of. So I went and found out who owned the building, on the Wednesday, the day after we'd cleaned up, and I just said, I want to take a lease on of the top two floors. Obviously, there were businesses on the ground floor. So he was very quickly came to a figure that I just didn't know how I was going to manage. But I just used to pay him a nice amount of money that every month, and he never invested a penny in his building. He was just delighted that we were doing that for him. And 7 years later, we finally broke him down, and he sold me the whole building. Wow. So it was not massively through business planning or design. It was just a kind of real sense of, an opportunity with the space.
Absolutely. And so you managed to get different types of funding. You funded it yourself. How did that all work? Because I've done a bit of research, but it seems like there was a very convoluted kind of route through all of that.
Yeah, again, not through design. So, I mean, a lot of our improvements were made through putting on parties. So we wanted to create studio spaces and an exhibition and event space, which was different to what the city had to offer at the time. But obviously, just not having a long lease, not having a kind of security in the building, it's very difficult to attract any investment. So we used to just chip away at it and do it ourselves. So if we needed new electricity mains put in, we'd do an electricity party. And, the funds would then go towards that. And if we needed to clear out a load of mess, we did skip parties. We did quite a lot of skip parties. I think we filled about 40-yard skips over those first few years.
Yeah. These were sort of like half community engagement parties, half kind of fundraisers.
Community engagement is definitely a kind of, putting a twist to that, but it certainly engaged the kind of cultural community, and we were hugely supported by that artistic community in Glasgow, and that went a long way, and that was through people helping out, coming down and just helping build walls and clear mess, and just there was a lot of fun, and we were we didn't know what the long-term real plan was, but from day one there was a kind of integrity to do something of quality, and there was also a mechanism to fund and do that, and it was very much self-sufficient. We weren't going for funding at that point. We just wanted to get in there and create something ourselves. And I think we've taken that approach right the way through. Our up until recently, all our development work and capital projects have been self-funded, whether that's through revenue or through loans, bank loans. But we've recently had significant public investment. But that wasn't the case for the first 15 or so years.
Okay, and so. It sounds like a really interesting project. Like I said, it doesn't have a kind of big plan to start off with, but what does it look like today? The kind of events that you're running. I know you have multiple spaces within one site. Could you just give us a sort of like overview, like how many people actually end up going to events there in a whole year, and kind of the different spaces that are being used in different ways?
Yeah, so we're basically two large warehouses connected together with 4 venue spaces across the two, all indoors. The smallest being the Poetry Club, which is 130 capacity. Then we have a 500 capacity, which was the first venue we did back in 2011, was also the home to those illegal raves back many, many years ago. And then more recently, we put a 1,000 capacity venue on the ground floor of that same warehouse. And then in 2016, when we bought the galvanizers, we developed a 1,300 capacity venue. Now, these all operate individually, or you can kind of, work a multi-room festival type event, which gives us lots of unique programming opportunities, and also gives music promoters the chance for, if bands are selling well, to move them up a room, or if ticket sales are not going as planned, then they can move down to a smaller room within the venue, so not having to remarket, which is quite attractive. So that's our events offer. We also, from day one, we've built up an artistic community. So there's always been workspace here, predominantly artist studios, and more recently design studio space and retail space. So there's about 120 people that work through the building as residents, and we have a staff of around about 100, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more during the busy period. So there's about 200 people all kind of based out of the buildings. I should say the buildings also include a number of railway arches that lead up to our warehouses, which we started to take on about 15 years ago, as we always wanted to expand that creative community out of the warehouse and into the street.
It's fascinating. So is there a particular flavor to an event there, or are you open to absolutely any type of event? I mean, can you give us a range of the types of events that you've seen happen there?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of our program, we only promote or book 25% of the content. 75% comes from other promoters, and there's certain artists we would not put on for cultural reasons, that maybe there's something that we're not comfortable with that they have said or stand for, but predominantly it would be to regard to an audience that they might attract that maybe is something we don't want to promote. But ultimately we're a venue available for hire, so there's a lot of the music events that come in that wouldn't be what we promote, but they come in, there's a demand for it, and if it doesn't happen here, it would happen in another venue in the city. So as a result, we've got a very wide-ranging program. I think the stuff that we put on has a particular aesthetic and sound, and that's built up over time. But because it's not just music, there's a kind of arts program as well. which, opens up to a much wider audience. And then there's some kind of what could only be described as entertainment events that maybe aren't sort of cultural necessarily, but attract audiences. We're quite a big venue, so it's important that we're a busy venue. Roughly 4,000 to 5,000 people a week come through the venue. Getting back up to the sort of 2019 numbers where we're just over 250,000 through the year. That's just event attendees. Obviously, there's other visitors to the venue as well. So yeah, we're kind of moving towards those numbers again, which is good to see.
Yeah, it's good to see. But in terms of when you hire out the venue, are we talking anything from kind of business conferences to crazy parties? Like, what's the range of kind of rentals that you do?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of, we've got quite a big kind of corporate client base now, something we started to really focus on about 6 or 7 years ago. The kind of club stuff is very Friday, Saturday heavy. Live music can happen any night of the week, and it inevitably does. I think we've got gigs on every night this week. We've got 2 on tonight, 2 on tomorrow. But our clients are, we had the New York Times here during COP26, which was, a great event, or a series of events that they programmed. And that kind of brought that end of delivery up a notch, which was really good for us as a business and a team to kind of, up our game a wee bit, especially coming out of the last 2 years that we'd had to deliver that. That program was fantastic. But we do quite a lot of product launches, corporate dinners as well. We just did a corporate graffiti day last week, which is something that we've started to do quite a bit. We've got quite a big street arts program. So yeah, the range is huge, and I think that's what makes it interesting for our staff and our team here. At least I hope it makes it interesting. That it's different every week, and the way we configure the rooms is different as well. So we've always got quite a busy crew team, building stages, breaking them down, building new things, rigging points, and all the rest of it. So it's a very dynamic space, and I think that's why people like to take it on. You can do your own thing with it. We invest in the kind of infrastructure and try and get the basics right, and then let people bring the pixie dust, as you say, and make the magic. So we've got our own team that can do that as well. But it's nice seeing how other people want to interpret the spaces.
Absolutely, I think that's really interesting to see the different use of space. But do you think people come there for a particular kind of look, as in, I guess, the warehouse look or whatever, or is there more to it? Is it part of the community side? What's the magic dust that you're able to lend to these corporate events, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I think the warehouse venue is definitely a selling point. We don't have any other warehouse venues in the city. There's a number of them elsewhere in the UK, especially London and kind of Manchester, Liverpool, and that's quite a common thing. But as much as it's a warehouse, we want to bring a real level of kind of comfort and quality to that warehouse, and it feels almost like you're walking into a museum now, as opposed to an old warehouse at the end of a street, which it did up until very recently. We just did quite a big piece of work, which was about kind of opening up the front of the building and just making it feel much more inviting to customers, especially during the day, as we try and really drive the daytime economy down here. Not taking anything away from our nighttime business, which is obviously, very successful and a big part of our public program. But we're trying to position SWG3 as a cultural destination for visitors to the city, but also very much for locals to Glasgow.
Are you ready to celebrate your successes in the world of meetings and events? The Skift Meetings Awards are back for 2024, recognizing the most innovative business events companies across 15 categories, and we want you to be a part of it. Winners will feature on Skift Meetings, sending a clear signal to events professionals around the world that these are partners they can rely on. The final deadline for submissions is June 11th. We encourage you to start your submission today to secure the best entry rates. For more information and to start your submission, head to live.skift.com.
And so I'm interested in understanding also the area around SWG3. I mean, it sounds like it went from being relatively derelict or relatively, not very inviting to somewhere that actually people go during the day, as you just said. Could you just take us through that and the role of the community around you in kind of doing that?
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. We've very much grown up in this location as the area around us has massively developed and matured. When I first was down here, there was one place you could get a sandwich at lunch. There was no real restaurants that you would go to.
I bet it wasn't a great sandwich either.
No, listen, it was a good sandwich. I'm not going to have that. It was a great sandwich. It was Montgomery's, and they did amazing paninis. Okay. And I miss those paninis.
I take it back. That sounds pretty good.
It was brilliant, and so stepping back a wee bit, we are Clydeside. We're pretty much right on the river, and I don't know if it was the 60s or 70s when we filled in the river and the SEC campus, which is our main events campus in Glasgow, also Scotland, really. It was built on that land. So the river used to come pretty much to our door, just the other side of the railway track. And that's obviously why these buildings, these warehouses were put up here, was to service the river and the shipping industry that was booming way back. But we were at the end of a dead end street, and it did, taxi drivers used to be kind of like, I don't know if I want to go down here. They didn't even know this street existed 15 years ago. But as Finniston, which is the area at the top of the street, has really blossomed into this kind of restaurant district of great bars, great restaurants, all independent. I don't think this was a planning decision from Glasgow City Council. This was like one or two really good operators moving in, doing a good thing and attracting other good operators. And, before you know it, you've got this really kind of vibrant little quarter of the city, which has just emerged in the last 15 years. And then the Hydro opened, which was the new facility that the Scottish Events Campus built, which has become one of the busiest venues in the world, if not the busiest. So you layer that on top, and you've suddenly got this kind of really, really busy sort of space at the top of the street, which feeds in and feeds off each other with the restaurants. And we've very much added to that and benefited from all that development. So it's become a really interesting area. And now that the city is really focusing on the development, the kind of redevelopment of along the Clyde, the corridor, then, we can play a really significant role in that connection piece between the West End, which is, ultimately a very affluent area, and the river, and then over to Govan, where there's a new footbridge going in at the end of next year. And this is, we sit right in the heart of that. So we're very, very conscious of what's going on around us.
I was going to ask you if you took some credit for the redevelopment of the area, but it sounds like there's a lot of other things happening. But you take some credit.
There's a lot of things going on. I mean, we've very much focused on our little patch down here, and we've definitely regenerated this little pocket. But I don't think we can claim credit for everything else that's going on around us. But I think we add something to it anyway.
That's great. So, I wanted to touch on sustainability. I know this is a really important thing for you. I've read through a lot of what's on your website, and it does sound like you're doing a great job. Obviously, there's way more to do. Anytime you bring people together, there's always waste. But take us a little bit through that journey of sustainability and what you've done so far, and what you're hoping to do in the future, or what you're planning to do.
I quite often when asked about sustainability, I quite often reference what used to be your environmental policy. And, we started to apply for funding and maybe about 2012, 2013, once we'd secured the building. And there was always that little bit at the back, what's your environmental policy? And you could usually put it onto one side of A4, and it was probably lifted from another venue's policy or an arts organization. And it was really a box ticking exercise, but now it's very much front and center of all the decision-making processes, certainly here and across all businesses now. It's so important, especially those businesses that plan to be here for this sort of medium to long term. Like I say, we've always looked at SWG3 as a long-term project. It was never a kind of quick fix in and out. Well, 7 years just kind of knocking around, doing up someone else's building. We wanted to get some return for that. And you know, once we'd kind of secured the full site that we're on now, we wanted to try and improve how we operate and how we perform. And I guess 2019 was the year we really started to look at that. Not that we were completely oblivious to it with our heads in the sand, but it didn't really kind of come through as as something that we were able to kind of take forward until around about 2019. We just commissioned an architect, Fleming-Brown, to look at our site and just think about a master plan for our site, because we were probably using less than 50% of the usable space. And we had a huge demand for workspaces, and we had just acquired some vacant and derelict land, which we felt could become a community garden. So they'd redesigned this master plan, and we're kind of working our way through that. But that was end of 2018 into 2019. We started having conversations about our operation, how we can improve that. And that's when, you know, we had the chat. David came in, as I said, and we started to look at this renewable heating and cooling system at BODYHEAT, which has become our kind of headline piece, but it's not the only thing we're doing. You know, I always think of SWG3 as we have a cultural program and we have a capital program, and one enables the other, but they're both there to sort of ensure the long-term viability of cultural and creative practice on this site. And our capital program has to be delivered with sustainability right at the heart of it, and our cultural program even more so, you know, as that's our public-facing program. So we've just been kind of going through a number of really painstaking data finding kind of work over the last few years, which has been tricky because the last few years haven't been typical. So your data is not exactly, you know, what you would have expected it to be had you done this 2017, 18 and 19. But, you know, we are where we are. We've got a really good understanding of what our performance is. And we've devised a route map to get to a net zero position, which is going to take a hell of a lot, you know, and not just the BODYHEAT system turning on. That has the potential to kind of halve our carbon footprint as an operation. But there's another 60 to 80 tons that we need to deal with on that front. And I mean, it's you know, as much as we can design a system, it's a massive cultural shift for us in terms of our staff, our residents, but our audience as well. And they need to come on that journey with us. And all venues are feeling it and thinking about it. It's just how you can implement it, given the climate we're in, which is challenging as it is, and any change of operations of that sort of size will cost, you know.
Absolutely. So want you to kind of explain BODYHEAT in a little bit of detail, and also wanted to cover a little bit of the kind of scope 1 and 2, which I think you sort of addressed, but now you're kind of like looking at the scope 3 areas. And I think BODYHEAT is kind of part of that, but can you just explain how it works and what is it and how it works first?
Okay. So BODYHEAT at SWG3 is a low carbon heating and cooling system, which is supplemented with a ground source heat supply from boreholes. How we do it is we capture the heat that's generated in our venue spaces from the audience. That heat rises and is captured in quite conventional AC cassettes, where it is sucked in and piped back to a plant room at the back of the venue. It's then converted in that plant room into liquid, where it kind of moves along more pipes and into the boreholes, which are underneath the community garden. And then that heat is stored in these boreholes, and then we can pull that out as heating or cooling at any point. And what we have at SWG3 is we have busy venue spaces, which is great for generating the heat, but we also have other spaces, workspaces, that require ambient heat. And our cooling demands are far greater than our heating demands across the whole complex, because we're trying to cool down the venue as the body heat rises. So we have an excess heat load, which is then used to heat the ambient spaces across the site. from lobbies to studio spaces and beyond. We're about to pipe it into a new building that will be fully heated by the excess body heat that's produced at the weekends.
So let me see if from a very layman's kind of mind in audio, if you will, to kind of see if I understand this. So you have a venue, let's say it's a concert going on, you have a lot of body heat being generated. And instead of kind of opening up the windows and just letting that go off to the atmosphere, you capture that and you're able to kind of transfer that into liquid and then put it into the borehole so that then you can distribute that to other parts of the venue and use as heating where it's needed. And rather than, cooling down that one space where it's captured or multiple spaces where it's captured in exchange. Is that sort of what I'm understanding?
Yeah, exactly. So you said it much simpler than I did. But that's it. It's, we've all been in a venue, in a club where the sweat is literally running down the walls. It's that hot. And, prior to that heat would just disappear through our roof and into the atmosphere. Yeah. And it's a big, especially the galvanizers, it's a very voluminous space and there's a lot of energy that's just getting wasted. Yeah. And now that we're doing it and it's working, it all makes sense. And we're going, what were we doing all this time? It's mad that there's quite often there's a solution right in front of you. I know
it sounds very circular economy, right? You have this, you're producing this heat, you're producing this kind of, which would normally be considered waste, but actually if you reframe it, it's not waste anymore, right? It's a valuable asset that you can use in other places.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And circular economy, that's a phrase that's been kind of getting used a lot recently and something that's moved into our language, I guess, in the last couple of years. As we started this sustainability journey, we started to talk about SWG3 becoming a circular campus and trying to understand what that means for us, and how that ties into, like I said, the capital program and the cultural program. And a lot of it's just about communication and a complete awareness of what everyone's doing on site and how you can repurpose and reuse and rethink the way you do things. And tying all that together is it's so much more of a job than you actually think. But we're very much thinking about the circular economy here, and that's part of our kind of narrative as we move into next year.
So wanted to kind of pick a little bit more at the scope 3. I mean, this sounds like a scope 3 initiative, but are there other things that you're thinking about in terms of going beyond the recycling or the kind of relatively simple opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I guess our biggest challenge is our audiences. How our audiences come to the venue and how we can improve that footprint of the carbon footprint of the audiences. So we've done a sustainable transport strategy for the venue, and that again, that's a huge cultural shift for the venue, and it's going to take time, and it's going to need other factors out with our control. We need better public transport connectivity in the city, and but we know that is happening. There's work in the pipeline in Glasgow to improve that, which is massively needed. So that also the way our staff and our residents arrive. So there's a lot of work to be done there. Our suppliers, we're starting to have conversations with our suppliers about how goods arrive here, how goods are produced, and what that looks like, and how we can improve that area of the business. You have to literally look at absolutely every aspect of the business, and something like this is very complex. We're not a venue. We're not a typical venue that just does events, because we are a workspace for many people. We are a retail space. We have kind of F&B offers on site beyond the bars for the events. So there's a number of different aspects, which gives it its challenges, but also means that there's also solutions in amongst those challenges for But it's down to that communications piece, and it's just going to take a long time. But yeah, we need to be aware of the scope 3, the big elephant, scope 3, that you can really focus on 1 and 2, and you can see a route out of that. But there's just the big beast that needs tackled as well, or certainly needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah, I think it's very refreshing that even if you don't have all the answers on the website, you talk about that. I think a lot of the event and kind of business travel world that I'm in like to talk a lot about sustainability, but then as soon as you kind of mention scope 3, it becomes this this kind of like, oh, we're not there yet, or we need some big technological revolution to get there. But I think, as you say, it's part of being a bigger picture and kind of, knowing what else is happening around you. Yeah,
and I think that's all fair enough. It's not going to be easy to get there, but you certainly can start chipping away at it. And being at the table for these bigger conversations is just been great. We've started to be brought into conversations with the city and other big kind of public bodies that can make those influence. So we just feel that's a big step forward for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that I read quite a bit about is your take. You have a number of policies for the venue, and I think when it comes to things like accessibility, having people with accessibility challenges participate in events and come to your venue, etc. But also inclusivity. You have a great dress code. I love it. Dress however the heck you want is essentially what I read. I don't know if it was those exact words, but it does sound like you keep it simple, but you're also very conscious of being inclusive of everybody. Could you talk a little bit about kind of your approach to the kind of inclusivity, I guess?
I mean, I guess it's common sense, really, isn't it? You want people to feel at ease. You want people to be comfortable. You want people to enjoy the venue right across the board.
It is common sense, but I know many venues don't do that in practice, right? And I believe that you have a reputation for actually, taking this quite seriously all the way through.
Well, that's good to hear. It's not something. I mean, we very much do, but I'd like I say, it's good to hear. But I think we're also very conscious of everyone's welfare on site. And that kind of people feeling comfortable. And there's been a lot of negative publicity, I would say, in terms of the kind of nighttime economy over the last couple of years, with like a number of different kind of allegations against it. But we very much take a strong stance in terms of people feeling at ease and comfortable in the venue, no matter no matter what their positions are on any fact. But we've got a great poster campaign, which is actually targeted. We have a sort of there's both many versions of it, but ultimately, I think the poster campaign in the gents' toilet basically just has the big headline, "Don't be a dick," and it's kind of targeting at that harassment of, in particular, male harassment of females. But there's a reversal poster or similar tones in female toilets and in gender-neutral toilets when we are operating events that require that. So we've got a very kind of open book policy to the venue, and we very much want it to be accessible and loved by all.
I think many people will appreciate that. So I want to start wrapping up, but I wanted to get your view on just events in general, in terms of how you see things developing. If you see kind of, I don't know if you will, the event of the future, what an event of the future looks like, and how is that different from something that happens today? And it could be any type of event, but where do you see kind of events as a kind of thing evolving?
I mean, I'm just glad events haven't moved into the kind of the threat of the hybrid event or the kind of online event that we were all getting faced with in the middle of 2020, when everyone was going, you need to repurpose your venue pretty much as a TV studio because everything's going to be, and there was a lot of messaging going like that. But live is back, and live is the best event experience and always will be. So I don't think that's ever going to change. I think the operations are getting slicker. Ticketing and your kind of your serve and everything's getting slicker. But events, I mean, I'd like to think that they do not change massively in terms of what they look and feel like, because ultimately it's a feeling, isn't it? It's an emotion, and that live experience cannot be experienced digitally or through anyone else's kind of prism apart from your own. So I'm hoping that doesn't shift a lot, but I think the way that we deliver events in terms of like that kind of accreditation and that kind of process of buying, and as long as things don't get too overloaded with marketing and advertising and kind of too much of that, then ultimately it's so important that people get to experience live events in all their formats. So, but they're becoming, I guess things are becoming a little bit more niche, and people are not necessarily going to the same venue week in, week out. When I was in my 20s, I would probably go to the same club every Friday night to listen to the same kind of music, because I loved that kind of music. And then things would change a little bit over time, and you would maybe go to a different space and you would stick to that. People move around a lot more. They maybe go to 2 or 3 different events a night sometimes, and they don't necessarily go to the same venue week in, week out, or month in, month out. So, as a venue, you need to be really, really dynamic, and you need to be kind of aware of that and not expect the same audience to be returning as much as you want them to. They're not going to. So you just need to be kind of constantly reimagining how you can use your space. And, we've got a very creative team here that do that. But I think that's going to be the challenge moving forward, is to constantly kind of, pulling and kind of making that venue space attractive to new and different audiences who always are seeking out a new experience. So how do you make that new experience in the same venue? That's the challenge for us.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I like how you said there about re-engaging audiences and just keeping the space very fresh, I guess, for them, and kind of having new things for them. I think that makes a lot of sense. Andrew, been a pleasure having a chat with you. I think it's been really interesting to understand the whole history of SWG3 and how it's all come together and what it's become. So really fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with us.